My name is Linda, and if you want to hear more stories from older people, subscribe to the channel Her Voice Tales and let me know where you are listening from. My daughter-in-law yelled at me in front of 25 people at Christmas dinner. Eleanor, look, we need to be honest about the situation, Chloe said, her voice cutting through the pleasant hum of conversation. If you want to keep living here with us, you need to pay rent like any other tenant, or you need to leave and find a place you can actually afford. What Chloe didn't know, what my son Daniel somehow still didn't grasp, was that this 3,000 square foot penthouse in Tribeca, where Chloe boasted about living thanks to Daniel's successful career as an architect, was mine. The black Audi Q7 she parked every night in the underground garage was mine. The platinum credit card Chloe used to buy Prada bags on Madison Avenue and finance her lifestyle influencer career was mine. Everything. Absolutely everything was mine. I am Eleanor Vance. I am 65 years old, and this is the story of how my silence nearly destroyed my only son, and how breaking it finally saved him. The aroma of roasted turkey and sage stuffing filled every corner of the expansive penthouse, scenting the air with tradition. I had been working since 5:30 in the morning, preparing the pumpkin pie, the homemade cranberry sauce, and the sweet potato casserole with the extra marshmallows that Daniel had loved since he was a boy. 25 people were settling down in the dining room, the chairs scraping softly against the polished hardwood floors. Cousins, uncles, Daniel's colleagues from the firm, and a gaggle of Chloe's influencer friends who spent more time photographing the food than eating it. The table shone with bone china dinnerware and Waterford crystal glasses that caught and fractured the lights of the 12-foot Christmas tree by the window, overlooking a snowy Manhattan. I moved quietly from the kitchen to the dining room, serving, clearing plates, refilling glasses with expensive Napa Valley Cabernet. My apron was stained with gravy, a badge of the day's labor. My hair was pulled back in a simple, practical bun, stray gray hairs escaping near my temples. My hands, wrinkled by years and work, trembled slightly as I held the heavy porcelain serving platter loaded with the turkey. Eleanor, could you grab us another bottle of red? This one is empty, Chloe said, not even turning her head toward me, holding up her empty glass while finishing an anecdote about her recent trip to Tulum. Of course, Chloe, I replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach my tired eyes. From my position next to the open-plan quartz kitchen island, I could see the whole dining room. Daniel was sitting at the head of the table, looking handsome in his tailored navy suit and the Tag Heuer watch Chloe had bought him for his birthday, using my money, naturally. He was talking to his cousin Mark about his latest project, a sleek residential tower in Midtown. The client is demanding, wants everything done yesterday, Daniel was saying, gesticulating with his wine glass, a flush on his cheeks from the alcohol and the attention. But honestly, the compensation for a lead architect in this city justifies the stress. It's what keeps this whole operation running. The penthouse, the cars, the trips. You have to hustle. Chloe, sitting next to him, smiled with a predatory satisfaction. She was wearing a shimmering silver dress that probably cost more than my first car. Her perfectly manicured, elongated nails sparkled under the chandelier light as she rested a hand possessively on Daniel's arm. Exactly, babe, Chloe added, raising her voice slightly so the entire table could appreciate her wisdom. People don't understand that this lifestyle isn't free. The bills in Tribeca are astronomical. Maintaining appearances, the networking dinners, the wardrobe, it all adds up. You can't just coast in New York. Several heads nodded in agreement. My brother-in-law, Frank, cleared his throat. They're right. Rents in this city are criminal. $3,000 for a closet in Brooklyn these days. Daniel straightened up in his chair, puffing out his chest slightly. That's why I always say you have to be shark. No one hands you anything on a silver platter in the real world. I felt a familiar, cold knot tighten in my stomach, but I kept slicing the extra turkey in the kitchen. No one looked at me. No one noticed how my grip on the carving knife tightened until my knuckles turned white. The conversation continued to revolve around money, the exorbitant cost of living, and how hard it was to make ends meet for people who were currently drinking bottles of $80 wine like water. Then it happened. The moment that changed everything. Chloe wiped her mouth delicately with her linen napkin, took a slow sip of wine, and turned her gaze directly toward me as I brought a fresh vegetable bowl to the table. There was a hardness in her eyes that I had seen many times before, usually when a waiter brought the wrong order or a store clerk didn't recognize her social media status. "Eleanor," she said, her tone suddenly sharp enough to cut through the ambient chatter. "Since we're talking about the cost of living and being realistic." The dining room fell silent. 25 pairs of eyes turned toward me, the serving woman in the stained apron. Chloe continued, placing her glass on the table with a deliberate click. "I've been looking at the household budget. Daniel works himself to the bone to provide all of this. And frankly, it's becoming a strain supporting 3 adults in prime Manhattan real estate." Time seemed to warp and slow down. I looked at Daniel. He was studying his wine glass intently, avoiding my eyes. Chloe pressed on, emboldened by the silence. "Look, Eleanor, we love having you here, obviously. But if you want to keep living in this penthouse, you need to contribute a fair market share of the rent, like any responsible adult sharing a premium space. It's only fair to Daniel." She looked around the table for approval, her influencer friends nodding vigorously. "We are all adults here. If that's too difficult for you on your pension or whatever, well, maybe it would be better for you to look for something smaller. Something more in line with your actual means. Perhaps in Queens or New Jersey." I looked around the table, searching for an ally. My cousin Betty avoided my gaze, suddenly fascinated by the cranberry sauce. Frank coughed uncomfortably. I saw a couple of Daniel's friends nod slightly. Chloe's friend, a girl named Trixie, murmured, "It's true, boundaries are so important for healthy family dynamics. Everyone needs to carry their own weight." No one raised their voice in my defense. Not one person said, "Chloe, you can't talk to your mother-in-law like that on Christmas." No one asked, "Are you seriously threatening to kick an old woman out in the middle of winter?" I looked at my son. "Daniel?" I asked, my voice quiet. He finally looked up, his face flushed with embarrassment and wine, but his expression was resigned. "Mom, look," he started, stumbling over the words. "Chloe has a point. We have financial goals, we want to buy a summer house in the Hamptons soon, and the expenses here are high. We just need everyone to be practical. It's just economics, Mom. Don't take it personally." The silence that followed was so dense that I could hear the wind howling outside the soundproof windows. I felt as if 35 years of sacrifice, of sleepless nights, of building an empire so my son could have a future without struggle, just evaporated in the penthouse's climate-controlled air. Slowly, carefully, I placed the vegetable bowl on the table. I untied my apron, folded it meticulously, and placed it on the kitchen counter. I stood up straight, feeling my spine crack slightly. "Thank you all for coming," I said in a voice so calm it surprised even me. "This Christmas dinner will be the last one I spend in this house." Chloe blinked, confused by my lack of tears or begging. "Oh, Eleanor, don't be so dramatic. We're just having an adult conversation about finances. No one said you have to leave tonight." "You're right, Chloe," I interrupted her, looking her directly in the eyes, then turning my gaze to my son. "It is time to be realistic. It is time to be adults." I turned around and walked toward the hallway that led to the guest suite where I had been staying for the past 3 years. Behind me, I heard uncomfortable murmurs, the scraping of chairs, and Chloe saying loudly, "See? She always does this. Total martyr complex. Anyway, who wants dessert?" I closed my bedroom door. The sound of the latch clicking shut was soft, but in my head, it resonated like a prison door closing on a long chapter of my life. I sat on the edge of the bed, surrounded by the luxurious furnishings I had paid for, and looked around the room that had been my golden cage. A plush queen-sized bed, designer lamps, artwork I had selected. I picked up a framed photo from the nightstand, my late husband, Robert, and me on the day we broke ground on our first major commercial project in Midtown. I was 40 then. I wore a hard hat over my practical hair, and Robert had his arm around me, both of us grinning like fools, covered in dust. Behind us was just a hole in the ground, but we saw a future. How did I get here? How did I go from being a titan of New York real estate to a tolerated guest in my own property, disrespected by a girl who had never worked a real day in her life, and betrayed by the son I adored? Let me tell you the truth. The truth no one at that polished table knew. 35 years ago, Robert and I started with nothing but debt and ambition. We bought a dilapidated tenement building in the Lower East Side when no one else wanted to touch that neighborhood. We lived in one of the units, breathing plaster dust and paint fumes for 2 years while we renovated it ourselves at night, after working our day jobs. Robert was a brilliant engineer. I had a mind for finance and contracts. We were a team. Every dollar we earned went back into the business. We wore second-hand clothes, ate cheap pasta, and didn't take a vacation for a decade. When Daniel was born, his crib was in our home office, surrounded to the ceiling by blueprints and permits. It took us 15 years to build the foundation. 15 years of grinding poverty while sitting on assets we refused to liquidate. Then came the boom. Our properties in neighborhoods that had gentrified skyrocketed in value. We leveraged them carefully, buying more. Commercial spaces in Soho, residential towers on the Upper West Side, industrial parks in Queens. By the time Daniel was in college, Vance Holdings LLC owned 52 prime properties across the tri-state area. Then, 8 years ago, Robert died of a sudden aneurysm. It devastated me. I threw myself into the work to drown the grief. I grew the company even more, a silent, grieving widow in black who could tear a contractor apart in negotiations without raising her voice. Daniel had graduated with an architecture degree, a path we encouraged. He got a job at a respectable, but mid-tier, firm. His salary was decent, but not enough for the New York high life he craved. 5 years ago, he came to me. "Mom, I want to move out of my old place. I found this incredible penthouse in Tribeca. It's perfect, but the rent is $8,500 a month. It's a stretch." I looked at my son. He had Robert's eyes, but he lacked our calluses. I wanted him to have the ease we never had. I wanted to protect him from the struggle. I opened my laptop. "We have a unit available in that building," I told him, lying smoothly. "Vance Holdings owns it. I can give it to you for an internal family rate. $2,000 a month." His face lit up. "Seriously? Mom, that's amazing. But where will you live? You can't stay in that old house in Queens forever." "I'm fine there," I lied again. The house in Queens was long gone. I actually lived in a comfortable, but unassuming, apartment on the Upper East Side that no one in the family knew about. "You take the penthouse. You're building your career. You need the address." He signed the lease that week. Landlord, Vance Holdings LLC. Tenant, Daniel Vance. He never questioned why the rent was so low. He just accepted it as his due. Then Chloe arrived. A whirlwind of social media presence and expensive tastes. When they got married 3 years ago, she insisted my Queens house wasn't good enough for me and invited me to live in the guest suite of their penthouse so I wouldn't be lonely. I accepted, thinking it would bring me closer to my son. I also gave Daniel an additional credit card linked to my primary business account. "For emergencies," I said. Emergencies turned out to be Chloe's entire personality. Dinners at Per Se, weekend trips to St. Bart's, a closet full of Louboutins. The bills came to me, sometimes hitting $40,000 or $50,000 a month.
I paid them in silence. Why? Because I was a coward. Because I thought that if I just kept giving, they would eventually be happy, settled, and grateful. I thought my love could be measured in paid invoices. I was wrong. Silent generosity doesn't create gratitude. It breeds entitlement. Back in the present, on Christmas night, I pulled a battered leather suitcase from the back of the closet. I started packing. I didn't have much here. My practical clothes, my comfortable shoes, a few books. It all fit easily. I stopped in front of the full-length mirror on the closet door. A 65-year-old woman looked back. Grey hair, tired eyes, but a jawline that had hardened over the last hour.
I had spent a lifetime building a real estate empire, and in the last 3 years, I had let my daughter-in-law treat me like a servant in my own kingdom while my son watched. I closed the suitcase. The zip was loud in the quiet room. I grabbed my purse, ensuring I had the keys to my real apartment, the hidden sanctuary on East 82nd Street that Daniel and Chloe didn't know existed. I opened the bedroom door. The sound of forced laughter and loud music came from the living room. They had resumed the party, likely relieved the downer was gone. I dragged the suitcase down the long marble hallway. The wheels clicked loudly on the stone, cutting through the music like a metronome counting down the end of an era.
The conversation in the living room ceased as I appeared with my luggage. Chloe was the first to speak, holding a fresh glass of champagne. Going somewhere, Eleanor? Don't tell me you're actually leaving on Christmas night. That is so passive-aggressive. I'm just following your advice, Chloe, I said, stopping near the door. I'm being realistic. I'm finding a living situation more suited to my means. Daniel stood up from the sofa, looking uneasy. Mom, come on. You don't have to leave right now. It's late. Chloe didn't mean you had to get out instantly. We just need to talk about a payment plan for January. No, Daniel, I said, looking at him, really looking at him for the first time in years.
I saw a weak man, a man I had crippled with kindness. I understand perfectly. You believe this house is yours, that the cars are yours, that this life is yours because you earned it. Because you're a shark. Chloe stood up too, placing a hand on her hip. He does work hard, Eleanor. He earns every penny he makes. We aren't asking for handouts, unlike some people who expect to live rent-free. The irony was so thick it almost choked me. There was so much I could have said. I could have pulled out my phone and showed them the deed to the building, the registration for the Audi, the credit card statements with Chloe's signature on thousands of dollars of purchases. But I didn't. Because words had ceased to matter. Only actions would register now. You're right, Chloe, I said softly. No one should expect to live rent-free. I opened the heavy front door. Daniel took a step toward me. Mom, where are you going? At least let me call you an Uber Black. No need, I said. I can manage. Merry Christmas, Daniel. I closed the door behind me, shutting out the warmth and the lies. The hallway was silent. I took the elevator down the 45 floors. The night doorman, an old friend named Samuel who knew exactly who signed his paychecks, looked up in surprise. Mrs. Vance? Leaving so late? Is everything all right? Everything is finally going to be all right, Samuel, I said. Could you do me a favor? When the repo team comes for the black Audi Q7 in spot B12 tomorrow or the next day, please ensure they have easy access. Marcus Thorne will send over the paperwork. Samuel blinked, confused, but nodded slowly. Of course, Mrs. Vance. Whatever you need. Outside, the cold air hit me like a slap in the face, waking me up. I hailed a yellow cab. No more company cars for me tonight. East 82nd Street, please, I told the driver. As the city blurred past the window, I didn't cry. I just breathed. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't holding my breath, waiting for the next demand, the next disrespect. My secret apartment was quiet, cool, and smelled faintly of lavender. It was comfortable, maybe 1,200 square feet, furnished with pieces Robert and I had actually loved, not expensive props. I left my suitcase by the door and sat on my linen sofa. I opened my laptop. It was 1 a.m. on December 26th. I logged into the secure executive portal of Vance Holdings. I navigated to the Family Assets, Daniel Vance folder. A list appeared, a digital record of my misguided love. 1. * residential lease agreement, Penthouse A, 101 Warren St. * tenant, Daniel Vance. Rent, $2,000 per month, market value, $12,500 per month. Status, active monthly. 2. * vehicle authorization, Audi Q7, plate GVZ 554. * owned by Vance Holdings. Authorized user, Chloe Vance. 3. * corporate credit card extension, Platinum Amex. * primary holder, Eleanor Vance. Authorized user, Daniel Vance, currently possessed by Chloe Vance. Limit: flexible. I picked up my phone and dialed a number that would be answered regardless of the hour. Marcus, it's Eleanor. I apologize for the time. Eleanor? Is everything okay? Marcus Thorne, my COO and Robert's former protégé, sounded instantly alert. He was the only one who knew the full extent of my arrangement with Daniel. No, Marcus. It's not. But it's about to be corrected. I need you to prepare 3 things first thing in the morning. First, a formal notice of non-renewal of lease for Penthouse A at Warren Street. Give them the statutory 30 days to vacate. Second, issue a repo order for the Audi Q7. It's company property being used by an unauthorized driver, Chloe. Third, cancel the Platinum Amex extension immediately. Report it lost or stolen if you have to. Just shut it down tonight. There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line. Eleanor, are you sure? This is nuclear. Daniel will be destitute. He won't be destitute, Marcus. He has a job. He has that hustle he talks about. He's about to find out what his hustle is actually worth in this city without my safety net underneath him. I looked at a photo of Robert on my mantelpiece. It's time he learned the lesson we robbed him of. True love isn't unending resources.
It's teaching someone how to survive on their own. Okay, Eleanor. Consider it done. The emails and certified letters will go out by 9 a.m. The card will be dead in 10 minutes. I hung up. I closed the laptop. Was I being cruel? Perhaps. But Chloe's demand for rent had broken something in me. It wasn't just the disrespect. It was the realization that I had raised a son who would stand by and watch his wife humiliate his mother because he was too weak, too comfortable, too addicted to the easy life I provided to stop her. I wasn't destroying them. I was introducing them to reality. The next morning, December 27th, at 10:30 a.m., Chloe Vance was seated at her favorite brunch spot in Soho, surrounded by 3 other influencers.
They were ordering mimosas and discussing the toxic energy Eleanor had brought to Christmas dinner. It was just so draining, Chloe said, adjusting her oversized sunglasses indoors. I had to set a boundary. Daniel agrees. Of course. We need our space. The waiter arrived with the first round of drinks and the bill for the previous night's deposit for their upcoming New Year's Eve party, $5,000. Chloe whipped out the heavy Platinum Amex. She handed it over with a practiced nonchalant wrist flick. 2 minutes later, the waiter returned, looking uncomfortable. I'm sorry, Mrs. Vance. The card was declined. Chloe laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. Don't be ridiculous. Try it again. It's probably your chip reader. He tried again right there at the table. Asterisk declined. Contact issuer. Asterisk Chloe felt a hot flush creep up her neck. Her friends were pretending not to look. Fine, I'll use another one. She pulled out her personal visa, the one attached to Daniel's actual salary account. The waiter returned 3 minutes later, looking even more apologetic. I'm so sorry. This one was declined for insufficient funds. Chloe's world tilted. That was impossible. Daniel got paid yesterday. She checked her banking app on her phone. The balance stared back at her in bright red numbers, $452.18. She scrolled frantically through the transactions. The mortgage payment for the Hamptons house they were trying to buy had bounced.
The utilities for the penthouse, which Daniel usually paid from his account while she used the Amex for fun, had auto-drafted, draining everything else. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced her hangover. She tried to call Daniel. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. At that exact moment, across town in his sleek midtown office, Daniel Vance was staring at an email on his computer screen that made no sense. Asterisk subject. Notice OF non-renewal of lease. 101 Warren St. Penthouse A. Dear Mr. Vance. Please be advised that Vance Holdings LLC, the owner of the aforementioned property, has elected not to renew your month-to-month tenancy. You are hereby required to vacate the premises and surrender keys no later than January 31st. failure to comply will result in immediate eviction proceedings. Governed by Real Property Law Section 226C. Sincerely, Legal Department, Vance Holdings LLC. Daniel read it 3 times. This had to be a mistake. He called the building management number at the bottom of the email. A receptionist answered, Vance Holdings, how may I direct your call? Yes, this is Daniel Vance. I'm a tenant at 101 Warren. I just got a bizarre email about my lease not being renewed. I think there's a glitch in your system. I'm on the family rate program. There was typing on the other end. One moment, Mr. Vance. Ah, yes. I see your file. There is no error. The owner has instructed us to terminate the tenancy. The owner? Who is the owner?
I need to speak to them. I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. My mother arranged this. The ownership information is proprietary, sir. We are just executing instructions. You have 30 days. Wait. Can I apply to rent it at the regular market rate? Maybe I can just switch contracts. Certainly, sir. The current market value for that penthouse is $12,500 per month, plus a required 3-month security deposit due to your credit check showing high utilization. Daniel nearly dropped the phone. $12,500. He was paying $2,000. His monthly take-home pay, after taxes and maxing out his 401k to impress Chloe's dad, was barely $7,000. I'll have to get back to you, he stammered and hung up. He felt sick. He tried to call his mother. It went straight to voicemail. His cell phone rang. It was Chloe, screeching. Daniel. What is going on? Both cards declined. I'm at Balthazar with Trixie and I can't pay the bill. I look like an idiot. Where is all our money? Chloe, stop yelling. Something is happening. I just got evicted. What? Who evicted us? The building. They aren't renewing the lease. And they want market rate to stay, $12,000 a month. 12 grand? But you said you had a deal. You're a brilliant architect. Fix this. Talk to your mother, she set it up. I can't reach her. And Chloe, where is the Amex? Why did that decline? I don't know. It just stopped working. Did you forget to pay the bill? A horrible, sickening dread began to pool in Daniel's stomach. The cheap rent arranged by his mother. The magic credit card his mother provided. The silence from his mother since last night. He grabbed his coat and ran out of the office, ignoring his assistant. He had to get to the bottom of this. He went down to the company parking garage to get his Audi. As he rounded the corner to spot B12, he stopped dead. The spot was empty. A bright orange sticker was plastered on the concrete pillar. Asterisk vehicle repossessed BY owner. Vance Holdings LLC. Asterisk Vance Holdings. The landlord. The car owner. Daniel felt dizzy. He leaned against the cold concrete wall. He wasn't stupid, just willfully blind for a long time. The pieces clicked together with the brute force of a wrecking ball. The family rate. The company car. The credit card that never seemed to have a limit. He didn't grab an Uber. He ran the 10 blocks to the Vance Holdings headquarters in Midtown, a building he had admired as an architecture student but never actually entered. It was a towering glass monolith. He burst into the lobby, sweaty and frantic. I need to see someone in charge, he told the security guard. My name is Daniel Vance. It's an emergency regarding my property. He was escorted not to an office, but up to the 40th floor executive suite. He was left waiting in a plush reception area for 20 minutes, stewing in panic. Finally, the double mahogany doors opened, and Marcus Thorne stepped out. Daniel knew Marcus vaguely. He was an old friend of his parents who sometimes came to barbecues when Daniel was a kid. Marcus? What are you doing here? I need help. Someone has stolen my car and evicted me, and this company Vance Holdings is behind it. Marcus looked at Daniel with an expression profoundly devoid of pity. Come in, Daniel. Daniel entered a massive corner office with panoramic views of Central Park. And there, Sitting behind a desk the size of a small car was his mother, Eleanor Vance. She wasn't wearing her apron. She was wearing a tailored Chanel suit, looking every inch the CEO she was. Daniel stopped, his brain short-circuiting. "Mom? What are you doing here?" "I work here, Daniel," she said calmly, gesturing to a chair. "Sit down." He sat, looking around wildly. He saw photos on the credenza, his father shaking hands with mayors, his mother cutting ribbons at skyscraper openings. He saw a plaque on the desk, * Eleanor Vance, President and AMP, CEO, Vance Holdings LLC. *. "You own this company," he whispered. "Your father and I built this company from nothing." "Yes. But why didn't you tell me? Why the secrets? The cheap rent, the car, you let me believe I was paying for that." "Correction," she said sharply. "You chose to believe you were paying for it because it suited your ego. I offered you a helping hand 5 years ago because you were starting out. I never intended for it to become a permanent lifestyle subscription for you and your entitled wife." "Mom, Chloe is flipping out. The cards declined. The car is gone. We are evicted. You have to fix this. You can't just cut us off like this. It's cruel." What was cruel, Daniel, was watching my son sit silently while his wife told me to pay rent in a penthouse I own, eating food I bought, wearing clothes financed by my labor. That was cruel. This is just accounting. She slid a folder across the desk. "These are Chloe's spending summaries for the last 12 months on the company Amex. $412,000. Handbags, spas, vacations for her friends. While you were hustling at your job making $80,000 a year after taxes." Daniel looked at the numbers, feeling bile rise in his throat. He knew she spent a lot, but this was astronomical. "I didn't know it was that much," he whispered shamefully. "Because you didn't want to know. It was easier to play the big shot architect. Well, the game is over. The lease is terminated. The car is gone. The card is cancelled. Where are we supposed to go? We can't afford Tribeca on my salary alone, especially with Chloe's debts." Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes cold fire. "Then I suggest you do what your wife advised me to do. Be realistic. Find something in line with your means. Perhaps in Queens or New Jersey." The echo of Chloe's words hit him hard. He stood up, trembling. "You're destroying my life to teach me a lesson." "I'm attempting to save your life before you become completely useless, Daniel. You have 30 days. Get out." Daniel stumbled out of the building a broken man. He had to go home and face Chloe. The ensuing fight in the penthouse was legendary. Chloe didn't blame herself for the spending, she blamed Eleanor for entrapping them, and she blamed Daniel for being a mama's boy loser who didn't actually own anything. They packed up in a fury of accusations. By January 28, they were moving into a cramped, one-bedroom apartment in Astoria, Queens. It was a 4th-floor walk-up with rattling radiators and a view of a brick wall. The rent was $2,200, which Daniel could barely afford. Chloe lasted 3 days. "I can't live like this, Daniel," she screamed, throwing a designer shoe at a cockroach that scurried across the linoleum kitchen floor. "This is disgusting. I am Chloe Vance. I have a brand to maintain. This is our reality now, Chloe. This is what I actually make. If you want more, you need to get a job." She looked at him with pure disgust. "A job? I'm an influencer, Daniel. My job is to live a fabulous life, and you are failing to provide it." The next morning, Daniel woke up alone. Chloe's side of the sagging mattress was empty. Her closets were cleared out. A note was taped to the refrigerator, * "I'm going back to my parents in Greenwich. Don't call me until you're the man I married again. The successful one, not this pathetic version. * Daniel sat on the floor of the empty, dingy apartment and wept. He had lost his luxury home, his flashy car, his beautiful wife, and his relationship with his mother. He was 30 years old, and he had absolutely nothing to show for it except a mountain of debt Chloe had left behind in his name and a bruised ego. February was the darkest month of Daniel's life. He went to his job at the architecture firm, but his heart wasn't in it. His colleagues, who had once envied his lifestyle, now whispered behind his back about his sudden downfall. He ate ramen noodles in his Queens apartment, shivering because he tried to save money on heat. He tried calling his mother a few times, but she never answered. He called his grandmother, Beatrice, who lived in Florida. "Grandma, Mom ruined my life. She took everything away." Grandma Beatrice, usually soft-spoken, was sharp. "Daniel Robert Vance, stop whining. Your mother didn't take anything that was yours. She took back what was hers. You let that girl treat Eleanor like dirt under her shoe. You should be ashamed." Chloe was just stressed, he tried weakly. "Chloe is a gold-digging harpy, and you were her willing victim. Your mother is trying to see if there's a man left inside the boy she raised. Prove her right, or stop wasting my time." She hung up. Rock bottom has a way of clarifying things. By March, Daniel stopped feeling sorry for himself and started feeling angry. Angry at Chloe for abandoning him the second the money dried up. Angry at himself for being such a blind fool. He needed more money. His current job was stagnant. He started looking for side hustles. He remembered an old friend of his father's, Frank Russo, who ran a gritty construction firm in Brooklyn that focused on affordable housing renovations. It wasn't glamorous architecture. It was hard, dusty work. He met Frank at a job site in Bushwick. Frank was a bear of a man, covered in drywall dust. "Well, look who it is. The Prince of Tribeca," Frank grunted. "Heard you fell off your high horse." "I did, Frank. I need work. Extra work. Anything." Frank eyed Daniel's soft hands and expensive, albeit scuffed, shoes. "You're an architect, Danny. You draw pretty pictures. You don't know how to really build." "I can learn. I need the money, Frank. Please. I'll haul trash, I'll demo walls. I don't care." Frank hired him as a weekend laborer, paying cash. For the next 3 months, Daniel worked 7 days a week. Monday to Friday at his firm, pretending everything was fine. Saturday and Sunday hauling debris, ripping out moldy drywall, and learning the difference between a load-bearing wall on a blueprint and one in reality. His body ached constantly. He lost 15 pounds. His hands grew calloused and permanently stained with dirt. But something strange happened in that cramped Queens apartment. He started to talk to his neighbor, Mrs. Gable, a 70-year-old retired nurse who lived down the hall. She brought him extra lasagna when she cooked. He fixed her leaky faucet. One night over tea in her cluttered, cozy kitchen, she told him about her life, how she worked double shifts for 40 years to buy this small apartment. "It's not much, Daniel," she said, looking around with pride. "But it's mine. Every nail, every floorboard. Nobody can tell me to leave." Her words struck him hard. He thought about his mother's secret apartment, the one he now knew existed.
It was probably like this, simple, real. He realized that the peace Mrs. Gable had in her tiny kitchen was something he had never felt in the Tribeca penthouse. That had been anxiety masked by luxury. This was ownership. By June, Daniel had saved enough money from his construction work to pay off the most urgent debts Chloe had left behind. He was exhausted, but he felt stronger. He was actually hustling now, not just talking about it. One Saturday on a job site, he was looking at the blueprints for a low-income housing complex Frank was renovating. The designs were terrible, cramped, dark, inefficient. "Frank, who drew these?" Daniel asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Some city engineer." "Why?" "They're awful."
"Look, if you move this partition wall here and open up this kitchen area, you gain 20% more usable light and it actually feels like a home, not a cell. It wouldn't cost any more in materials." Frank looked at the sketch Daniel made on the back of a napkin. He grunted. "Draw it up properly by Monday. If the foreman approves it, I'll give you a bonus." Daniel spent the weekend manic on caffeine, redesigning the entire floor plan on his old laptop. It was the best work he had done in years because it wasn't about impressing a rich client with marble foyers. It was about solving a problem for real people who needed decent homes. The foreman loved it. Frank gave him a $500 bonus. More importantly, Frank gave him a look of genuine respect. Maybe your old man's blood is in you after all, kid. That night, Daniel called his mother. It went to voicemail again. He left a message. Mom. It's me. I'm still in Queens. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm tired all the time. Chloe served me divorce papers. I signed them today. I wanted to say you were right. About everything. I was weak, and I was ungrateful. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know that I'm finally waking up. I love you. He didn't know that Eleanor listened to that message 5 times, sitting in her dark living room, tears finally falling down her cheeks. In August, a massive opportunity came to Frank's small firm. The city was accepting bids for a revolutionary new project, the Phoenix Initiative. It was a plan to convert a derelict industrial complex on the Brooklyn waterfront into 500 units of mixed-income, high-quality sustainable housing. It was a $100 million contract. Frank knew construction, but he didn't know how to pitch to the high-level investment board that was funding the initiative. Danny, you know this high society talk, Frank said, tossing the bid packet onto a dusty table. You know the jargon. You draw up the proposal. You do the presentation. Frank, this is way out of my league. My firm wouldn't even let me near a pitch like this. Your firm isn't here hauling sheetrock on a Sunday. You are. Do it. Daniel threw himself into the project. For 3 weeks, he barely slept. He poured everything he had learned, his architectural training, his newfound knowledge of actual construction realities, and his deeper understanding of what a home really means, into the proposal. He designed spaces that were beautiful but cost-effective, communal yet private. It was the culmination of his entire life's experience, both the high and the low. The day of the presentation arrived in mid-September. Frank rented Daniel a decent suit since his old ones no longer fit his leaner, more muscular frame. They arrived at a sterile, intimidating conference center in downtown Manhattan. They were led into a boardroom that rivaled his mother's.
5 people sat at a long glass table, the investment board. Daniel sat at the head, Frank beside him looking uncomfortable in a tie. Daniel began his presentation. His voice was shaky at first, but as he started talking about the design, about the light, about the dignity of the space, his passion took over. He wasn't selling luxury, he was selling humanity. 40 minutes into the pitch, the door at the back of the room opened quietly. Someone slipped in and sat in the back row of chairs, shadowed. Daniel was too focused to look close.
He finished the presentation, sweating but exhilarated. This isn't just housing, he concluded, looking at the 5 stone-faced investors. This is a foundation for 500 families to build their lives on. It's practical, it's sustainable, and it's the right thing to do for this city. There was silence. Then, the person in the back row spoke up. The construction timeline seems aggressive given the budget constraints on materials, a familiar, authoritative female voice said. Daniel froze. The blood drained from his face. He squinted into the shadows. Eleanor Vance stepped forward into the light, wearing her business armor, looking utterly formidable. Mom. Daniel breathed.
Frank looked between them, confused. You know the head of the investment board, kid? She's the head of the board. Daniel stammered. Eleanor ignored him, walking to the front of the room, taking the seat at the head of the table that had been vacant. I am the primary private investor backing the Phoenix Initiative through a subsidiary trust, she announced to the room. She turned her cool gaze to Daniel. Answer the question, Mr. Vance. Your timeline. Defend it. It was the hardest moment of Daniel's life. He wanted to run. He wanted to apologize. He wanted to cry.
But the look in his mother's eyes was a challenge. Asterisk, are you a professional, or are you still a frightened boy? Asterisk, he took a deep breath, pushed his personal feelings aside, and became the architect. The timeline is aggressive, Ms. Vance, but but it relies on a modular construction technique for the interior framing that Frank's team has perfected over the last 6 months. It cuts labor time by 30%. We aren't cutting corners on materials, we are innovating on process because we know the physical reality of the build. He spoke for another 10 minutes, answering technical questions with confidence, referencing his hands-on experience in Queens and Bushwick. He wasn't BSing. He knew what he was talking about because he had swung the hammers himself. Finally, the questions stopped. Eleanor looked down at the proposal binder in front of her. She closed it slowly. The room held its breath. She looked up at Frank. "Mr. Russo, your reputation for integrity is solid." Then she looked at Daniel. Her expression was unreadable for a long, agonizing moment. "The design shows maturity," she said carefully. "A grounding in reality that is rare in architects of your previous background. It seems you have learned the value of a square foot beyond its retail price." She stood up. "The board will deliberate. You will hear from us by the end of the day." Daniel and Frank left in a daze. Frank clapped him on the back outside. "You did good, kid. Real good. Didn't know your mom was the big boss, though. That was intense." "Yeah," Daniel whispered, his knees shaking. "It was." That evening, Daniel was sitting in his Queens apartment, staring at the brick wall outside his window, when his phone rang. It was Marcus Thorne. "Daniel, the board has made a decision. They approved the Phoenix Initiative proposal. Full funding. You and Frank got the job." Daniel let out a yell that startled Mrs. Gable next door. "Oh my God. Marcus, thank you. Thank you." "There is one condition attached to the funding, dictated by the primary investor," Marcus continued dryly. "Anything."
What is it? "The lead architect for the project, you, must attend a mandatory weekly debriefing dinner with the primary investor, Eleanor Vance. First meeting is tomorrow night, 7 p.m., at her residence on East 82nd Street. Do not be late." Daniel smiled, tears prickling his eyes again. "I won't be late, Marcus." The next night, Daniel stood outside a modest brownstone on East 82nd Street. It took him 3 tries to ring the bell. His mother opened the door. She wasn't wearing a suit, and she wasn't wearing an apron. She was just wearing nice slacks and a sweater. "Come in, Daniel," she said softly. The apartment was warm, inviting, and real. It smelled of roast chicken.
They stood awkwardly in the small foyer for a moment. "Mom, She held up a hand to stop him. She walked to a small antique desk in the corner and picked up a rectangular piece of paper. She handed it to him. It was a cashier's check for $50,000. "What is this?" "It's the down payment for a condo in Queens or Brooklyn. Something modest, something you can actually afford the mortgage on with your current salary. It's a loan. Interest-free, but a loan. You will pay me back every month." Daniel looked at the check, then at his mother. He slowly shook his head and handed it back. "No, Mom." Her eyebrows shot up. "No? You're refusing help? Daniel, don't be foolish. That apartment you're in is awful." "It is awful," he agreed, smiling faintly. "But I pay the rent. Me. Nobody else. I'm going to stay there until I save enough for a down payment myself. I need to do this, Mom. I need to know that what I have is mine because I built it, not because you gave it to me." Eleanor stared at him for a long time. The hardness in her face seemed to crack, revealing the mother underneath. Her eyes welled up. "Oh, Daniel," she whispered, stepping forward and pulling her dirty, calloused, exhausted son into a fierce hug. He held her tight, burying his face in her shoulder like he was 5 years old again. "I'm so sorry, Mom. For everything. For Chloe, for the Christmas dinner, for not seeing you." "I know," she soothed, stroking his hair. "I know. It's okay now." She pulled back and cupped his rough, bearded face in her soft hands. She looked into his eyes and smiled a genuine, proud smile. "You know," she said, her voice thick with emotion. I think you finally sound like a real Vance. Your father would be very proud of the man who walked into that boardroom yesterday. I'm trying, Mom. Come and eat, she said, leading him to a small dining table set for two, with no expensive china in sight. I made chicken. And Daniel? If you ever let anyone speak to me the way that girl did again, I really will disown you. Daniel laughed, a real, deep laugh. Deal. By the way, where do I send the rent check for tonight's dinner? Eleanor swatted his arm. Shut up and eat your potatoes. We ate. We talked. Not about money or penthouses or social standing. We talked about work, about the concrete pour schedule for the Brooklyn project, about Mrs. Gable's lasagna recipe. It was the best meal I had eaten in years. The Phoenix project was a massive success. It took 3 years to build. Daniel was on site every day, solving problems, getting dirty, leading with a quiet confidence that earned him the respect of every tradesman on the crew. He met a woman named Sarah, a public school teacher who volunteered at a community garden near the site. She drove a 10-year-old Honda and thought Tribeca was soulless. They lived in a nice 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn that Daniel bought with his own savings, and a small, conventionally structured bank loan. I retired last year. Marcus runs Vance Holdings now, though I still keep an eye on the board. I spend my time traveling, real traveling, not just visiting 5-star resorts. Last Christmas, we hosted dinner at Daniel and Sarah's place in Brooklyn. It was crowded, loud, and full of laughter. Frank Russo was there, telling inappropriate construction jokes. Mrs. Gable came from Queens. Sarah made a lasagna that was almost as good as hers. At one point, I was in the kitchen helping Sarah clean up. Through the doorway, I saw Daniel holding his newborn daughter, explaining something about the structural integrity of a gingerbread house to his rapt audience. He looked tired, happy, and utterly grounded. He looked up and caught my eye. He raised his glass of reasonably priced red wine in a silent toast. I raised my soapy hand in return. My silence that terrible Christmas night 3 years ago had been the hardest thing I'd ever done. It felt like breaking my own heart to break his fall. But as I watched my son, the builder, holding his own future in his arms in a home he truly owned, I knew it was the greatest gift I could have ever given him. I had finally stopped giving him things, and instead, given him back to himself.